Welcome to Everything CPA and Private Equity, where we unpack the evolving relationship between accounting firms, private equity, and other strategics. I'm David Wolfskehl, a partner at Whitman Transition Advisors.
And I'm Phil Whitman, CEO of Whitman Transition Advisors. And we've chatted with more than 150 private equity groups. We've actually closed over 40 transactions with those private equity groups. And we're bringing you firsthand insights from the front lines.
And whether you're exploring your first deal, putting your toe in the water, refining your strategy, we're here to guide you with real stories, expert advice, actionable takeaways. Let's dive in. Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Everything CPA and Private Equity, where we're here to educate leadership teams on what's going on in the marketplace so that you can make good decisions about your future. And today, so excited to have part of the leadership team of Frazier Deeter on today, Jeremy Jones, Seth McDaniel, and they're going to talk about their journey, right? And their journey was from a no to a yes, from, hey, not sure about it, to we're excited about it. And so very appreciative of both of you sharing those insights. And Phil, I know you've worked with these folks for a while, so why don't you introduce yourself and introduce the team?
Yeah, sure. So Phil Whitman, CEO of Whitman Transition Advisors. And, I had the good fortune of first meeting Seth McDaniel. I was introduced to Seth by Terry Putney of our team. And Terry has known the Frazier Deeter firm for quite some time. And, I remember having a call, when all of this excitement was first starting. And Seth, I don't recall, maybe you could do some sharing. I don't know if you had already met with someone and received an offer and said, now we're going to sit on the sidelines. But I do know that you were sort of like exploring. And then, it was very, very early on. And it was sort of like, okay, we're going to wait to see what happens. But I don't want to paraphrase, your journey. So, most certainly would love to hear, from the humble beginnings of private equity coming in, what your thoughts were, and obviously how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, thank you, Phil, and appreciate you all having Jeremy and I on the podcast today. Yeah, so the original thought was, again, it all comes back to our strategy, and our strategy is to build a national firm with international capabilities based in the Southeast. And so a few years ago, as private equity started getting into our space, we really thought about, okay, how's that impact our strategy, and will we be able to continue the path that we've laid out with private equity in our space. And a few years ago, again, to your point, private equity being so new in the space, we've made the decision to hold off and let's see what's happening with this. Let's see where things like multiples go, where regulatory, where that process heads, and to really let's take a minute, let's understand this, because it is a fundamental shift in the way that we want to go to market and in our capital structure. And so as we started to see it gaining momentum, we started seeing the level of interest from quality private equity partners like ours, General Atlantic. We made the decision that to really be able to do the M&A activity that we wanted to do, having a private equity partner would enable us to enhance that and grow faster and really fulfill that ultimate strategic mission that we have to create a national firm based in the Southeast.
And so really staying true to your strategy, right? Using the PE investment as a way to perhaps accelerate it, right? Make it go faster, maybe make it go bigger, but really enhancing the internal strategy. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
And I'm curious, did you find prior to taking that investment from General Atlantic that you were missing out on M&A opportunities to other private equity-backed firms and firms, that were putting considerable capital up front?
Yes. Yeah, we definitely saw that. And also just the pace that they were going at and the resources that they were able to bring into those pursuits was greater from the private equity backed firms.
And you talked about, you ended up, but General Atlantic became your partner. Why don't you talk a little bit about the process you took to end up at General Atlantic? Because I'm sure that wasn't one and done, one conversation, and magic happened. So why don't you share a little bit about your internal process?
Jeremy, would you like to take that one?
Sure. As Seth mentioned, we started back in 22, kind of evaluating this and decided not to go forward in 22. And then early in last year, in 24, board charged Seth and I with the task to go evaluate where the market was and if it was time to take private equity or to look at a strategic buyer. We really think about taking care of our people and our clients. So Seth and I began that journey in earnest in April of last year. We talked to some private equity firms that had been calling on us over the last couple of years, got to know them fairly well, but to be prudent with the task at hand, Seth and I did interview a group of investment bankers that were focused on larger CPA firm deals. We interviewed about, I think it was 4 or 5 investment bankers. William Blair is our investment banker. We picked him right around 4th of July, and they started putting together a book for us. And we went to market in early September with our SIM. Along that path, from July till September, William Blair kind of tested the market, let people know we were coming to market on a confidential basis. So Seth and I had probably talked to 20 to 25 different private equity firms at that point. We had our initial indication of interest were due at the end of September. We got in around 35 indications of interest, some of which we had talked to the firm, some we had not. So Seth and I then had the task of paring that group down. So we pared it down to about 20 firms that went a little deeper in diligence with us. And then at the end of October, we cut the number of firms down to 8. It went through 2 weeks of management presentations in the first 2 weeks in November. And at that point, we had a very difficult task for Seth and I of picking 2 or 3 firms that we really wanted to kind of sprint to the finish line with. We had 8 great private equity firms. We loved them all. They all had different attributes we liked about them. Some were very large, some were very small, but again, they were all great firms. So we did pick 3 who went really deep in diligence through December, and then at the end of December, it was clear to Seth and I that General Atlantic was the right partner for us. That we shared a lot of cultural alignment, and then we had a lot of the same thoughts on how the CPA market was going to grow into the future. So that's kind of where we ended up with General Atlantic. And then we closed beginning of May. We actually closed the transaction, and it's off to the races, as I say.
Well, congratulations. Yes. And one of the things, I frequently tell people when they work with us, there's going to be a lot of confusion before you get to clarity. And most certainly going from 30 to 8 to 3. And again, at Whitman Transition Advisors, between Terry, David, and I, we've met with 205 private equity groups to date.
So we've had a lot more fun than you've had, right?
Oh, my
And I
goodness.
know you were thinking you guys had a lot of fun. We've had even more fun.
And, obviously we don't work with all of them, but, one of the things that we find is, and I certainly give you guys a lot of credit, because I'm sure it was no easy task, really narrowing it down, because there's a lot of, from a chemistry and cultural perspective, I'm sure even when you narrowed it down to 8, had you gone with any one of those 8, you guys would end up being wildly successful. But, obviously there were reasons, that you brought it down to General Atlantic. And one of the things that I do have a question, because obviously it was the 2 of you charge. I imagine you at some point brought your board in, and then obviously your general partner group. How did you deal with, and this is a question I get all the time, and Jeremy, you look like you could be classified as one of those younger partners that how is this good for us younger guys? The older guys are getting so much money, and I'm never going to, because I came from a firm where we had multiple 7-figure earners, and clearly the next generation were the ones that were making 300, 400, 500,000. And their aspirations, I'm sure, were one day I want to be one of those 7-figure earners. How did you deal with not only the younger, newer partners, like, how could this be good for me, but also, your bench of future potential partners?
Yeah, one thing that was important to us was to be very transparent with the partner group. So there was no hidden agenda. There were a lot of meetings. It was pretty much every other Friday, full partner meetings. We gave them update on the process, let them know where we were. Things changed, right? I mean, like multiples were changing. Other firms were taking private equity at the time. So it was just a constant evolving conversation with the partner group. We, as a partner group, we did decide we were going to make sure all of our partners, at the time we had 61 partners. So we were going to make sure all partners were taken care of financially, and we were going to make sure all partners were bought into the vision of the firm going forward. There were a lot of one-on-one conversations. Seth and I spent hundreds of hours meeting with partners and not just talking about the financial side, but talking about the cultural side and talking about what the future really holds for all of us. And it was getting a little bit of the mind shift from how much money am I going to make this year to what is the potential that I can make over the course of my career through multiple transactions as well as current comp. And that's one of the misnomers that people have with the private equity is that we're all going to be poor going forward and not ever make, but that is not true at all. So, we had a lot of those conversations. Our new partners, we have 10 new partners that came in beginning of this year. So they were not part of that conversation last May, June, July. So we did a lot of education with them starting in December all the way through the close of the transaction. They're all happy, all bought in, all on board. And we have a path forward for future partners as well, where they'll get to buy into the firm. There will be other ways for them to get some equity in the firm. So we're excited, and everybody voted yes. Everybody was excited, and everybody sees a path forward.
And so let's shift to, we talked a little bit about your journey, and now we talked about your strategy. So let's talk about tomorrow a little bit. You've had this investment for 12 days. So I believe since it's been closed, so we're not asking you for what's happened so far, but why don't you share your vision of how this investment is going to help you and the firm?
Jeremy, I think that's a great one for you.
Yeah. So happy to jump in on that one. From a vision of the future, as Seth mentioned, we do want to be a national firm based in the Southeast. So part of that is going to be geographical expansion, to which Phil and the team are helping us with. So we appreciate that. We are currently, we've got 5 firms that are in various stages of acquisition. So anywhere from initial conversations all the way through hopefully a couple going under LOI in the next couple of weeks. So that's going to be a big part of it, is how do we expand geographically? And it's not just to get bigger. It's how do we expand geographically to better serve our clients and our people. That's the most important thing. So when we look at acquisition targets, we're looking at people that bring in new service lines, maybe bring in talent we don't have, or, obviously the geography and industry expertise. So that's going to be phase one. We're also looking at how do we invest further in our people and in technology. So technology can be anywhere from automation and AI, streamlining processes. How do we integrate firms we are acquiring more efficiently? And then the people strategy is really how do we continue to upskill and invest in the talent we have here in the States, as well as investing in talent in other markets outside of the United States. So those are the 2 kind of avenues we're going with: the inorganic growth and then the organic growth of continuing to build what we have here.
Right. And then you also talked earlier about, it was really for your employees and for the clients. So what kind of reactions have you gotten from the clients as you've spoken to them about this? I'm assuming you have spoken to them about this. So what kind of reactions have you gotten from some of your clients?
It's been very positive. They've all wished us well and said congratulations. There have been a few questions around where's my data going to be and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, the lion's share of our clients have been very excited for us and excited to see how we're going to be able to serve them better in the future.
Yeah, and I always said, I think your clients, they pretty much care about 3 things. They still going to have you, your partner group, the people that are working on the engagement. Are they going to get the same or better quality of service? And are their fees, going to remain fairly stable? And I'm sure, everyone, you go through the, okay, as you get larger, is this client appropriate for us? And I always say, let them vote with their feet. You increase the fee rather than saying, hey, it's time for you to go. Maybe that's the coward's way out. But in any event, I can't see how it could be bad for one of your clients.
Yeah, I think given the level of investment that we're planning for technology and people, I think it's only going to enhance the service that we're able to provide.
Now,
And
I want to say, do you feel, Seth, now that, and obviously I know it wasn't just you, there was a board, decision that was made back in 22 to sort of like wait it out and see what happens. But obviously, when you think that, you know, Eisner Amper transaction was probably like at a 9 and Citron was at a 10. And, rumor is that Frazier Deeter was at mid-teens, 15 or so. And I know at the time of that transaction, it was probably the largest multiple paid to a firm to date. How does that make you guys feel? I mean, were you the smartest guys in the room, or were you lucky?
well, I'm glad that I see smiles, right? I would have been disappointed if I didn't see smiles with that question.
Yeah, I've never been called the smartest guy in the room, so I'm pretty sure that's not what we are. I think the timing just was right, and again, I think to execute on our strategy, we just made the decision that now's the right time. There's so many people that are interested in this space that we could pick the right partner for us. That, yes, as Jeremy mentioned, it was a long process, but it was necessary. And we ultimately got to the absolute right answer for our business partners. And we couldn't be more excited there. Obviously, valuations in the space have improved, and where that goes from here, I'm not sure. But at the end of the day,
I was going to ask you to look into your crystal ball
yeah.
and say, okay, well, we do know. So,
Yeah.
so gentlemen, we do know that in the veterinary space and in other spaces, we have seen multiples go into the 20s. And I think when we look at a CPA from business compared to, okay, I'm bringing my dog or my cat in, I think there's so much more that you could be offering to your private equity investor in terms of other advisory service offerings. I mean, there's just so much more you could do for your client.
Absolutely. Yeah, we agree completely.
And then for your line partners, right? I would imagine the two of you have some perhaps additional responsibilities, perhaps additional meetings and things. But if I'm a line partner, how has my life changed, if it has at all, since this transaction?
Yeah, I mean, what we've told the partners the whole time is keep the main thing, and take care of the clients and the people, and that's their job as line partners, and that's not going to change. So we have to continue focusing on the clients and people, and all we do. Our partner is a little different than some other private equity firms, so they've been very clear they do not want to manage the business. That's our job to manage the business. So to keep doing what we do the way we do it is why they chose us to invest in. So they're not messing with our bill rates. They're not telling us how to do our jobs. They're not doing any of that. So Seth and I get that opportunity to continue leading the firm the way that we have in the past.
And so I'll ask you one quick question, if I could, right? So the Wall Street Journal came out with an article last week talking about, the doctors telling you guys, be careful about quality control. Based on that last sentence, quality control remains within your purview, remains in your ability to impact that. So why don't you talk a little bit, since the Wall Street Journal just came out with that?
Seth, you want to jump on that one?
Yeah, so Jeremy and I are both historical audit partners. I actually was at the PCAOB for a period of time too. So quality is very important to us, making sure that we do a good job. In fact, when you look at our core values, they're peak, PEAQ, and the Q is quality, which is the underpinning of everything that we do. If we're not doing a quality job, we're not going to be doing it for very long. So that was something that was very important to us, along with other items in selecting a partner is, are they going to really get on us about, numbers, and will it impact quality? And at the end of the day, we felt very, very comfortable that GA was not interested in negatively impacting quality, but we're interested in helping us enhance quality through technology and better investments in people.
I'm curious, since you mentioned PEAQ and Q is quality, what do I imagine the P might be people, but what's your E and your A?
Yeah, so it's people, entrepreneurial, accessibility, and quality. So Jim and David, when they founded the firm, it just instilled a level of entrepreneurship in all of us that it is a business and we continue to make investments in that business. And accessibility, we're accessible to each other, open door policies, and we're accessible to our clients, returning phone calls and emails and all that kind of stuff within a 24-hour period. So those are kind of the underpinnings of who we are and our culture and how we talk about our culture.
Now, that's awesome. And I love, when I see a firm when they have an acronym with values and things like that. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, if you need help with an acronym,
I'm with Phil.
Stop what he's doing.
Yeah, by the way, if you could come up with an acronym for UTA that means something other than Whitman Transition Advisors, I'm trying to figure that one out. But one other question I have, because we hear this a lot from firms, especially with private equity. And obviously, when we use the term private equity, there's a lot of strategic investors out there. There's family offices, wealth management, and pension fund. There's a whole slew of folks. But your new partner is a true private equity group. And one of the things that people voice their concerns about is private equity is going to look to have a turn in 3 to 5 years. And who's going to own us then? And my sense, I've always told people, it's going to be business as usual. Just because there's another turn doesn't mean that you don't have clients and you don't have a seat. It just means you have another partner with a capital stack that's coming in. And look, we've seen it with the validation of this model with Blackstone coming in and taking New Mountain now. But do you or your partners have any concerns? Because some people tell me that some of the folks at Citron didn't even know it was going to be Blackstone coming in. Like it just sort of happened, like New Mountain made a decision. I don't know if that's true. When I meet with Alan Beatty, I'll ask him and I'll find out. But in any event, any concerns of yours as to, that flip 3 to 5 years? I know it's another bite at the apple and that's great, but do you have any sort of power in that 3 to 5 year, that decision as to who's going to be your new backer?
This was a big part of the conversation, right? It was a big consideration for our partner group and for Jeremy and I also. So, and at the end of the day, this is one of the things that as we got into this process, we understood better is that our partners do have a lot of power in that ultimate decision as to where we're going to go. It's very hard to sell a company if the company doesn't want to be sold. And so it will be an ongoing conversation. There was some conversations about what the next turn might look like. There are some governors in the document as to what that might look like. But at the end of the day, like everything else, and again, this is why we were so comfortable with General Atlantic, is that it was a very open dialogue and a lot of really good conversation about what's best for the business long term. And we're going to do what's best for the business when we get to the next turn.
That's awesome. Sounds like you got a wonderful partner in General Atlantic.
We believe we picked a great one.
And I think when you know what you want, like you said, the right partner becomes easy for you to select over time if you know what you want. And sometimes people need to get to internal clarity first.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do think too, with our size and where we're positioned, we think that we'll be able to have several turns before there's any meaningful conversation that's different than what we are today.
So as we wrap this up, any final thoughts that you'd like to share or any highlights about Frazier Deeter you'd like to share with our audience?
Jeremy, you want to go first?
Sure. I know a lot of people are concerned with private equity coming into the CPA world. And, if we get covered in the Wall Street Journal, then that means we're actually important enough now as an industry. But yeah, I would encourage all the firms that are listening today to really think about what they want to be into the future and not to rule out private equity because of something you've heard in the past, but to really think about what you want to be in the future. And it could be you become a platform of a private equity company, or you could become an acquisition target for one of the private equity backed firms, or you may decide to stay independent into the future, but you have to make that decision as a firm and as a partner group. But don't rule out the opportunities, because there are a vast amount of opportunities. And Phil mentioned, there's different buyers, and there's a different buyer for every single firm. So just encourage everybody to look at what you want to be.
Well, thank you. We love that, because so often people have conversations with themselves without really knowing what the outside world reality is. So thank you. Seth?
Yeah, I'll just add on to what Jeremy said. Private equity is a tool to get you where you want to go. So understanding where you want to go and where your partners want to be is the most important thing. And then once you understand that, figuring out the best way to get there is really not that difficult.
Well, so much, so appreciative of both of your time. So excited for it. It's been 12 days, so I'm sure you're just getting started here. But, lots of smiles, and we see lots of good things. So
what a wonderful story. What a wonderful story, going back to 22 to where you got today. And kudos to you and your management team. Congratulations. We're very much looking forward to helping you achieve some of those goals as you continue along your journey.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Well, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe, like this stuff. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. We're here to help. We're here to bring you ideas and great people. Seth and Jeremy, thank you so much. Phil, as always, thank you for co-hosting. Go crush your day, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into Everything CPA and Private Equity. Every episode brings fresh insight. However, there's always more to talk about. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe wherever you watch podcasts. Have a question or topic you'd like us to cover? We'd love for you to reach out to us. Together, we will help you navigate this dynamic landscape so that we can help you achieve your goals. Until next time, keep making moves that matter. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.